Abe Hamadeh on my show today. It's going to be an interesting talk. Welcome to Freedom Talk. Abe, it's so good to have you on Freedom Talk. I know you and I have been trying to get this together for quite some time, and welcome. Really good to have you.
Thank you for having me on, Kelly. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Maybe you could briefly tell us a little bit about yourself and your background for those who are watching.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a first-generation American. My parents came here from Syria with no money, no education, and total American dream story. Right. My sister, she married an NBA champion, actually played at Arizona State University, and he won a championship with the San Antonio Spurs. My brother is a successful real estate investor in Arizona. And here I am. I'm a former prosecutor at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office and also a former Army Reserve captain and intelligence officer. And this time last year, Kelly, I still had not even announced my campaign for Attorney General, actually, because I just returned from a 14-month-long deployment with the Army to Saudi Arabia. I got back in September of 2021. So, when I got back here, Kelly, I looked around and I no longer recognized our country. And that's why I decided to run. I think it's time for, the same old guard who got us into this mess aren't going to be the ones who get us out of it. So, jumped in, and it's been a rocket ship ever since. I announced on November 1st, which is coming up, and, received endorsements of Senator Rand Paul, President Trump, Rick Grenell, Kash Patel, real good fighters. And I'm really excited about the future of Arizona with Kari Lake, Blake Masters, myself. I mean, we're going to be leading the nation really soon.
Yeah, we definitely support you as well. And, we had a small business here in Tucson and experienced governmental overreach, oppression. And as parents of school-age children, we've also experienced being demonized, even monitored by the FBI. I'm in a fight right now. I got my second day in court where it's basically a misdemeanor 3 trespass, which is kind of it's less than jaywalking, and yet they're prosecuting it like it's federal crime. So what we've experienced under Ducey and Branovich has been really lackluster support for people, even the absence of support. We've all been through a lot, but let me move on a little bit because there are a number of issues. I think one of the main ones that we're all concerned about is border security. Can you tell us what you would do about the border?
Absolutely. Well, this is why it's so critical that we also get Kari Lake elected as governor. I can't do this all on my own, but I've said on day one when I take office, I'm going to work with the legislature to classify the drug cartels as terrorist organizations, Kelly. And, with that designation, there's actually some consequences with it. When we label them as terrorist organizations, we can seize their assets. We could have enhanced sentencing. So instead of just getting 5 or 10 years in prison, there'll be enhancements for them. And Arizona has the ability to do that, by the way. Arizona law uses the U.S. Department of State's definition of what a terrorist organization is, which, as you and I know, the federal government has been completely politicized. And when I was serving in the Army overseas and when I was deployed to Saudi Arabia, we had the Yemen Houthi rebels who were firing missiles at us while I was there. And under President Trump, they were terrorists. And under Biden, when he got in, he delisted them as terrorist organizations. And that's primarily one of the reasons why Saudi Arabia is not very happy with President Biden right now. So Arizona knows what the threat is, and the threat are these drug cartels who are narco terrorists. So we're going to get a lot more aggressive with them. Work with Kari Lake on the classification of an invasion at the southern border. But the federal government is not here to help. I think they're wanting to have this flood of illegal immigrants come across, but it's not just the illegal immigrants who are coming, which is about 250,000 every month. It's the fentanyl, it's the drugs. The drug cartels are making a lot of money on the drugs as well as the illegal immigration that they're helping to come across. So that's where it's concerning, because the drug cartels are a sophisticated operation. We got to get tougher with them. China has been really involved with their operations as well, bringing the fentanyl over and poisoning children. So we got to get aggressive. And so many of our problems can be solved at our border. But, what we're going to do is hold the line in 2022 up until we can get a new president in 2024.
Yeah, that's extremely important. And it's shocking to me because school parents right now are being treated as parents. Like I said, I'm in the middle of that right now. And yet the cartels are welcome. The borders are open. things are really turned around on their head, because I know a school mom down in Saurita who went to support her daughter when she was quarantined. She went with some friends and her husband, and they wanted answers to their questions. She, her husband, and the teenage daughter got put in handcuffs, shoved into police cars, and she, a school mom, wonderful woman, no criminal record, ended up being sentenced to 5 days in jail. And we see this kind of persecution, and yet criminals are going free. We really need a strong attorney general. And you are a rule of law kind of person, and your opponent, Chris Mays, I just see her as an activist. I don't see her following law. She's pushing an agenda. Would you agree with that?
I mean, she's never even practiced law, Kelly. That's what's so fascinating. She's a professor of environmentalism at Arizona State University, and before that, she was a journalist at the Arizona Republic. So, I mean, literally her top 3 issues, my opponent has said: fighting climate change, abortion rights, and saving democracy. Now, that to me, that looks like the syllabus of a professor. It's because she is a professor, and she wants to fight the weather. I want to fight the criminals. I want to fight the drug cartels. That's the biggest difference between us. And you're right. This is upside down land. It seems like we're living in right now, where they're targeting law-abiding citizens like yourself, or concerned parents who don't want critical race theory or this weird gender, sexualization of children in their schools. We're treating them like terrorists. That's what's so frightening. What we're living in, it's no longer the federal government that we're just fighting. The radical left, Kelly, has infiltrated every aspect of our lives.
They sure have.
From big tech to big business. And I tell people, we never forget, big business, big tech, they can be as tyrannical as the government. So this is where when I'm Attorney General, I am tasked to protect Arizonans' rights. I mean, that's the first duty of government, is to safeguard our freedoms. And that's exactly what I intend to do. And, the COVID times, if there was one silver lining to COVID, it was that we finally recognize states have power, and we're gonna punch back. And I never want to see churches, schools, small businesses have our loved ones die alone at the hospital. Quite frankly, I think our founding fathers would be ashamed of us, Kelly, for what we put up with.
I can't agree more. They warned against this kind of thing. In fact, our government was founded on that long tradition of freedom, going all the way back to England, back to Magna Carta, as you know, Blackstone law. Our country was founded on law, but it was also founded on the idea that the government is accountable to individuals. So you say that, states' rights come into play, absolutely. But also, as individuals, we need to be involved, first of all, by voting, but also to standing up and calling things out for what they were. For example, the community came to our coffee shop and we're saying, look, because of these quarantining policies, the forced masking, the isolation, the prejudice towards students who couldn't medically wear masks or chose not to, keeping them home and isolated, it was resulting in a mental health crisis and kids committing suicide. And a lot of the school districts ignored that, and instead of addressing it, they demonized the parents. And as a result, the DOJ tried to designate parents as criminals and terrorists. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Well, I'm sorry you had to go through that, Kelly. And, it's not just the DOJ. I mean, look at the President Biden right now in his speech the other month. We tend to forget it, but I mean, he literally called half this country the biggest threat, right? And said that possible domestic terrorists. And that's what's frightening, what's going on. They're targeting conservatives. They're targeting them not just the government, but if you look at banks closing bank accounts right now, they're trying to basically cancel us from society. And we have to punch back. We have to fight back and safeguard our rights right now.
Yeah, I'm still going through it. I mean, it's a battle, and I just encourage everybody to identify those people in your community who are fighting. Definitely the politicians. One of the things I love about Carrie is she's really stood up for people like me, people who are standing up to this, willing to take the hits. So I would say, identify people like that too. And I really do hope you get in office, because you seem like the kind of person that would work within the communities, really listen to people. We didn't get that from Brnovich, and certainly not from Doug Ducey. I want to talk a little bit about election integrity. I know this is a big topic. From my standpoint as a citizen, I'm troubled when one side absolutely denies that anything happened. There's always some amount of cheating, but every day we have new things come out, like Katie Hobbs missending, what was it, 6,000 ballots?
That's right.
And whether or not that was purposeful, I think there's abundant evidence of malfeasance. What's your view on election integrity?
Well, I think Carrie Lake handled that question so well by the media about, they keep calling us election deniers, but they don't call Hillary Clinton an election denier. They don't call Stacey Abrams, who has still refused to concede the 2018 Georgia gubernatorial race. And this is why Carrie Lake, myself, Blake Masters, we've been put through the ringer with the media. We're punching back. We're fighting back against their narrative because we all recognize that the election of 2020, look at it. I mean, clearly there was rigging going on. You had, at the time, literally Facebook say that Mark Zuckerberg has said that he worked with the FBI to suppress the Hunter Biden story. We had here in Arizona a federal Obama-appointed judge extending the voting registration deadline by 3 weeks. And they were allowed to, 30,000 new voters were added to the voting rolls in those 10 days before the Ninth Circuit came down and struck it down. There's clearly issues. Here in the primary in August in Pinal County, just north of Pima County, they ran out of Republican ballots, Kelly. Why is that? They ran out of ballots for people who are voting in person, which Republicans generally tend to do, and especially now when there's such a, people distrust a lot of the mail-in ballots. So this is where, we have to stand for integrity. We have to stand for honesty and competence in our elections. The fact that Secretary of State Katie Hobbs has sent 6,000 ballots that were probably incorrect, she should lose her job. She shouldn't be promoted to governor. She can't even do her current job.
Yeah, currently. She certainly shouldn't be administrating this next election. Seems
Clearly
to me like a conflict of interest to be running an election where you're one of the candidates. But what are your thoughts on the ruling on the recent Durham case?
Well, it doesn't surprise me if you look at the Sussman case that happened prior to, so we had that same outcome. But I think the biggest benefit of what the Durham investigation has shown, it's shined a light onto this Russian collusion hoax. Kash Patel, he's a great friend of mine, and he was standing alone when with all this happening, right, 4 or 5 years ago during the whole Russia collusion hoax, and now he's been proven right. I mean, and the media, there's no accountability. Remember, they received a journalism award for their coverage of the Russian collusion. I mean, for saying that there was actual collusion, and there wasn't any. And the fact that the media doesn't want to address this, they were literally saying that the Russians stole the 2016 election and interfered to support President Trump.
I remember, yeah.
And there's been no justice for that. This is where Americans are fed up. This is why the legacy media is done. I'm glad to be, with Epic Times with you, Kelly, because this is where people are getting their news information from. You're not bought and paid for by the corporate interest or by the Democratic Party like they are. I mean, that's where the legacy media has become the propaganda arm of the Democratic Party. So, unfortunately, we didn't get the outcome from the Durham probe. It doesn't surprise me, but if there's, especially it's in a DC jury, which is going to be very Democratic anyway. But, this is where at least people now know. There's plenty of documentaries, there's plenty of books, there's plenty of articles now written about how the Russia-Gate collusion was a hoax. And, it's going to go down in history as been one of the biggest scandals, I hope, and hopefully we'll have justice with it as well.
Yeah, and actually on previous shows, during that time in Pinal County, Sheriff Mark Lamb, who's become a good friend, came on the show and talked about that. And gosh, we had a former FBI agent, a 21-year veteran, Greg Schaefer. But yeah, Kash has a show on Epic Times as well. I'm looking forward to meeting him someday. Busy guy though. But you and I, just before we went on air here, we were talking about the lockdowns and the effect that it had on businesses, the effect it had on people's lives. And I mentioned to you that Jeffrey A. Tucker, who is the founder of the Brownstone Institute, frequent contributor to the Epic Times and other publications. And we did an article on this. Let me get it straight here. Reparations for the business victims of lockdowns. And what he was proposing is that the government really harmed us. They put orders and mandates into place that weren't laws. And in his opinion, we should have, what he says is, let me just read it here real quick. How to compensate. My proposal, in short, all businesses with fewer than 1,000 employees should be exempt from all federal corporate taxes, FICA taxes, and all other expensive and arduous mandated benefits, including healthcare mandates, for a period of 10 years. that's pretty bold. And for us, it's too late because our business already is closed. But what are your thoughts on any kind of reparations or recognition that some injustice was done to small businesses in Arizona?
Well, Kelly, I'm so sorry what you had to go through. For you to have, do honest work and work your whole life to have that shop and have it closed because of the fear mongering that the media, propelled and that the government here, was buying into. And you had Walmart, you had these big box chain retail chain stores open. None of it made sense. It was upside down land, and there needs to be justice. And I haven't seen the proposal by Jeffrey Tucker, but it seems very reasonable, for you to just not pay some tax that you owe to the federal government right now. Because look at what Dr. Fauci, even Dr. Fauci just this week said, maybe the approach was too heavy-handed. Well, obviously, and Senator Rand Paul was leading the fight on that for a long time. And everything that we've said about the COVID times, has actually come true. Exactly. They called us conspiracy theorists at one point, and they're still trying to force vaccines on children. Kelly, they've decimated our armed forces by trying to mandate this vaccine, and we didn't understand. It's crazy how government. What I love Milton Friedman. A great quote by him is says that there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government program, and that's exactly what we saw during the COVID times. Remember the 2 weeks to slow the spread. We all knew that was going to be a big hoax. I mean, they're still trying to force it on us. And don't forget, in April, we were still wearing masks on planes. But who fought that? Who actually had the courage to overturn that was a 34-year-old federal Trump-appointed judge in Florida. Wow. That's why I say, courage is contagious. We need a lot more courage in our politics right now. And I absolutely want justice for what they've done. And we need to make sure it never, ever happens again.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. The things that we were saying early on have come true. And at the time this all started, I was working as editor-in-chief for a medical publication and working with one of the nation's top doctors who was originally from China. And I started calling this out, the whole London College study that came out way over predicting mortality.
I remember.
I've never seen anything like it. I just started putting in facts that I was getting through work and research. And just got attacked. It was like people weren't interested in looking at facts and data. It was just
Kelly. The same people told us to trust the science are the ones trying to tell us there are 10 genders or unlimited genders. So I don't take what they say very seriously. I think we need to remove science from the government and have a separation because clearly they have failed. And it's unfortunate, but we have lost total confidence in the scientific community.
Yeah, and by the way, I didn't make the coffee. That was. My wife was the manager of the store, but I actually am a scientist, and I've seen this suppression and censorship. And I know you have to go in a few minutes, but could you talk a little bit about censorship on social media, in the mainstream media? What can we do in Arizona to fight that? I know there have been some lawsuits in other states, but a lot of us are getting real tired of being shadow banned, deplatformed, getting those nasty grams that are post.
This is where,
standards.
The Ohio AG they have a lawsuit trying to see if they're going to classify Google as a public utility. And I think this is where we have to fight back against big tech. They have balance sheets of some bigger than most countries, actually. And they're basically acting as agents of the government. And that's what's so frightening. Remember back in February of this year when the Canadian truckers, they put Canada, they saved the whole world, actually. That's when a lot of the COVID hysteria died down because the governments realized, okay, well, the people are revolting. But remember when that happened, GoFundMe, if you donated money to the Canadian truckers, GoFundMe, well, it froze those accounts. It was going to send them to radical leftist organizations. And who fought them? It was state AGs who fought them. And instead, GoFundMe had to refund those. So state AGs fought that on consumer fraud protection statutes. And that's where the AG's role is so much more critical than ever before. We're actually winning. The President Biden's a $10,000 student debt forgiveness plan that he had. He actually rolled back on it for the private loans, and that was done because state AGs were filing lawsuits. So we're actually being really effective right now. So we're going on offense this November, Kelly.
Yeah, and the government using private business to me is the definition of fascism. In the trucker, well, at least with the U.S. truckers, I know. Well, I think the Canadian ones as well. Heather Wilson from Give Send Go and their team stood up and when GoFundMe froze the funds, she stepped up and said, "Hey, we'll do it." And I love her spirit. I've gotten to know her. She they tried to pressure her and shut her down, but she just stood her ground and said, "No, we're going to do this." And I love that, because I see businesses coming alongside people like you who also want to serve in the government, working with those in the government who have accountability to the people. But Abe, I want to thank you so much for running. We wish you the best. I want to encourage everyone to vote for Abe Hamadeh. There really is no other option if we want a free Arizona with secure borders that's run by the rule of law. And please tell Cash I said hello, and he's got to come on my show.
I will, absolutely, Kelly. And thank you again for having me on. The media, the Democrats, they're terrified of me right now because, I'm a first generation American, son of Syrian immigrants. I'm an Army veteran. I'm a former prosecutor, and I know how to communicate, and I'm articulate. That scares them, and it defeats their narrative. So this November, the media and the radical left, their day of reckoning is coming.
Thank you so much. Really glad to have you on. I'm looking forward to hopefully you, Carrie, Blake, and others getting into office, because I know you'll listen to people like me, and we're on your side and we're behind you. So thanks a lot, Abe.
Thanks so much, Kelly.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye. Before we go, give me that cold stare, that tough guy stare that you have in some of your pictures. No nonsense.
Well, I smile all the time, but I don't know.
You do. I've seen some pictures where you're very serious, and I think
that's when
great.
the media has asked me a dumb question, probably.
Yeah.